I believe everyone has some kind of genius in them, even if it is untapped and dormant, but what is the best way to optimize your genius into success? What if I told you that we as people could learn a valuable lesson from a fictional anime character? One Piece's Dr. Vegapunk, the One Piece world's greatest scientific mind. He or she has this figured out, and it's the secret that elevates everything at a massive scale. The secret to why he's able to create futuristic islands, cyborg dogs and sharks, dragons, and clones of mass destruction. It's insane how much we can all learn from studying and analyzing the little we know about this mysterious mad scientist. So stay tuned to the very end to fully understand why this secret will change your entire perspective of Vegapunk and how to implement this into your own success. And let's start off with what we already know about Dr. Vegapunk. And Dr. Vegapunk was first mentioned in Water 7 while Kobe brought him up in his amazing scientific mind to Luffy. We learned that he is the world government's brightest mind. He is responsible for creating the Barkuma pacifistas that fly around as Iron Man-like machines. He also figured out a way to merge Kizaru's light power with these creations. More recently, Vegapunk has now given the world government the SSG, a new set of Lunarian model pacifistas that are combined with the former warlords Mihawk and Boa. These have the capabilities of extreme durability and are terrifying to face up against even for someone like Blackbeard to take caution. Vegapunk is a natural prodigy, diving fully into his talents and genius. I picture him as someone who pushes himself to his absolute limit, someone who is interested in history, biology, technology, and achieving things that seem almost impossible. Similar to Luffy, Vegapunk is someone who receives praise from everyone and is in real time changing the world. He is well known and responsible for his findings in lineage factor, and this was during his days with the mad science group that involved Queen, Judge, and even Caesar. While Smoker was able to create the smiles, Vegapunk surpassed him and created Momonosuke's dragon fruit, replicating Kaido's almost exactly. He has a vested interest in devil fruits and is famous for figuring out how to feed a devil fruit to an inanimate object, bringing this elephant sword to life, as well as a turret that ate a dog fruit that we saw in Alabasta. And we also know that Vegapunk is famous for his research into devil fruits because Oda once said in the SBS how we will have to wait until we meet Vegapunk to learn the secrets of devil fruits and their many mysteries. It's interesting that in chapter 1061, Vegapunk says, "Did you just say I saved you, you naive pirates? I work for the government. Despite my mediocrity, they like to call me their scientific genius." So I'm not sure if Vegapunk is being sarcastic here, a bit condescending, or if he's actually just a socially stupid, unaware, humble genius. These lines somewhat imply that Vegapunk has something against pirates, so it's going to be interesting to see where the morality lies here. Some other scientific experiments that Vegapunk has created are cyborg animals similar to the shark that we see attack the Straw Hats in chapter 1061. Frankie visited his old home during the post-timeskip where he studied and altered his body to create a bunch of new powerful and overall cool science-related techniques, and it makes me wonder that if without Vegapunk, Frankie might have never even gotten his button-changing hair or his infamous nipple lights. And speaking of Frankie, to help me blow up this video and get it out to as many One Piece fans as possible, make sure you super suplex slam that like button. In chapter 1061, the Straw Hats arrive at Egghead Island, the winter island of Vegapunk in the New World that is stated to be 500 years in the future. And keep this in mind because it's important, specifically the detail that they are both futuristic. Katakuri is a place where multiple scientists including Frankie, Vegapunk, and someone you might have forgotten about all brought their scientific genius. Dr. Tsukimi was creating automata and died after moonwatching and witnessed an explosion, and so it reminds me of the theory of Vegapunk being an alien or somehow learning about the same history as NL, because when I think of sci-fi, I do think of Star Wars inspired technology, and I know Threevil recently made a video about Vegapunk being an alien, so you can go and check that out if you're interested after this video. Now let's ask the $1,000,000 question, is Vegapunk actually a female? And before I tell you what I believe, let me know in the comments what you think. Unless Vegapunk got a gender transfer from the revolutionaries, I'm not buying it. I also don't think Oda will reuse the same Yamato Oden joke from Wano, so it makes me question everything. You know what they say, only believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. I've heard many people say this is Vegapunk's daughter or granddaughter, making Vegapunk the family name. My idea is so much different from the alien and granddaughter theories, despite me liking both of these ideas, and we'll get into what that is soon enough as we analyze the reveal, if you can even call it with that. Knowing Oda, he loves to misdirect, so taking this at complete face value is definitely something to question. First, we have to address the oddity that no title card shows up here. Normally in One Piece, we see a character introduced in a cool box with their name and title if they are important. And you would expect for someone as hyped up for hundreds of chapters like Vegapunk that he would receive his own title card. And then why do we all have this preconceived idea that Vegapunk was a crazy old scientist as well as an old man? Well, multiple times in the story, it's been implied that Vegapunk is a man, like with Kuma and even more in recent times with the Admirals. So I am extremely skeptical of this character. I've seen a fuss being made about the bodysuit Vegapunk is wearing having the number 2 on it, and you could argue, oh, Frankie has the number 37 on him, so what does the number have to do with anything? Well, some people think this is a robot for Vegapunk, a clone, an android, which are all possibilities, but even if that's true, I don't think the number 2 on her clothes is real evidence of this. I could argue that Frankie doesn't have cloning technology, so the number means nothing, but on the other hand, the clothes themselves could have been created by Vegapunk and are a certain model or version. So going back to Egghead being a futuristic island, how is it possible that Vegapunk is able to create a land 500 years in the future? I'm not questioning Vegapunk's ability, I'm questioning that he has enough time to work on all of his passion projects while being the most important outsourced employee of the world government. With the lineage factor discoveries being regarded as some of the most important findings in One Piece's scientific history, I think it's fair to say that Vegapunk can take advantage of this. And so who better to test this cloning on than himself? Yes, I believe Vegapunk has cloned himself multiple times. You see, Mad Science Group is obviously a play on the trope of a mad scientist, and this is exactly the type of insanity that you would see using himself as a test subject to mess with the stats of his test tube baby clones of himself like a 2K My Player, even finding a way to make a young female version of himself, and like we've seen in the Seraphim, these clones can be younger, childlike creations. Maybe this is why the Vegapunk we saw introduced when we first entered Egghead Island looks so much younger than you would expect from a crazy mad scientist. Look at something like the Bart Kuma pacifistas. They look like a mix of clones and cyborg enhanced war machines. We saw what Judge was capable of doing in having an entire facility of clones manipulating stats like strength, size, and yes, even having women. We already know gender swapping is possible in the One Piece world because of the hormonal abilities of Ivankov, changing the person at a biological and genetic level. If SSG is only a glimpse of Vegapunk's madness, imagine how much time it took to get him to this level. Keep in mind that Vegapunk is the key to lineage factor, so it's possible that he was tinkering with it, cloning even before Judge was. So what is the secret key to Vegapunk's genius success and supersede his former peers? We're talking about the Prodigy who became the greatest of all time. Now around 80 to 85% of our viewers are not subscribed yet, and if you're one of these people, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell like Luffy and Skypiea to be notified for future videos. Well, to understand that, we must look at the consequences of self-cloning. If Vegapunk really is being tongue-in-cheek and condescending here meeting the Straw Hats, it would essentially prove that his humble talk is fraudulent. It would mean that he is self-aware enough to understand the value of his brain, the value of his very existence. Someone who is self-aware of reality while maintaining an optimistic delusion, and these are the most dangerous people. We've seen this with Luffy when he was humbled and reality checked by Ace's death and Jinbei, or even the Sabaody incident. Luffy's optimism was shaken for only a fraction of a second, a wake-up call that he had to level up. And now that he has, I would argue that we haven't seen a more cocky, more arrogant, more confident, and more insane Luffy than we have now in Wano. My point is that if Vegapunk is smart enough to understand the reality of his limitations while simultaneously acknowledging that he is the LeBron James basketball prodigy of the One Piece science world, that he was most likely born with a literal bigger brain, naturally gifted and blessed with the perfect circumstances and personality. The most depressing thing to someone like Vegapunk, whose passion is endless creation, studying, researching, learning, and repeating this cycle over and over again, is accepting death. Not fearing death itself, but more so the fact that you can't continue this cycle forever, and can continue to progressively enhance your own technology, your own creations. We've talked about immortality plenty of times on this channel, whether it be Emu, Law's immortality surgery, Blackbeard's fear of death, death, the potential of cryogenic freezing, and many more times. Physical immortality, which is like Emu, and then the legacy immortality, which is the will of D, inherited will passing on, where their wills are immortalized and realized by legacy continuing on with their successors. And these two different forms of immortality is becoming a huge theme of the series as we progress more and more towards the end. And so how does this relate to Vegapunk? Well, when you think about 500 years in the future, you might think of traveling to other planets, lightsabers, and spaceships. But another futuristic technology is a memory transferring chip, a hard drive that you can implant into a vessel, a technology where you can insert yourself into any ideal body. But how would this work in the One Piece sense? Well, I picture somewhat of a mix of Orochimaru and Pain from Naruto. Orochimaru in the science sense that he is immortal and using bodies like vehicles, and it's on to the next. And then there's also the entire Mitsuki situation with the test tube babies and everything like that. As far for Pain, well, what if Vegapunk could create a hive mind situation where every vessel is tied to the original Vegapunk in some kind of renegade fashion, in a world where greatness is represented by string? The scientists of One Piece don't really stand a chance. I'm just gonna go out and assume that Akainu could murder Vegapunk in a 1v1. So another benefit of having all these empty vessels and simply inserting consciousness in some kind of homunculus-like fashion is that in one way that would make him somewhat untouchable, whether it's like Nagato controlling these multiple cyborg bodies, or more similar to Naruto's clone and sexy jutsus all working together, communicating telepathically across an entire war. I could ultimately see him going either way. Another benefit could be that what if Vegapunk gave a different devil fruit that he created to each different vessel? Since we already know that Vegapunk can replicate devil fruits, I could very well see this being a possibility. And ultimately the main reason why I believe this is that it could explain how Vegapunk was able to 10 times his production output in recent times, creating a place that is not from the future in the literal sense. But when you live on an island where 10 alternate universe Rick and Mortys are working together with the same goal in mind, of course this would be a land of unimaginable inventions and breakthroughs. What one Vegapunk could achieve in a lifetime can now literally be 10x'd. The lesson here is really about optimization being the key and adding a factor of scalability being the ultimate optimizer. And to understand this even more, we could look at someone like Mr. Beast, who talks about continuously scaling up and optimizing his success for his other businesses. This all reminds me of the story of Mr. Beast paying people to become him. He has actually paid others to study his every move, his every line of thinking, his decision making, his whys and why nots. And then these Mr. Beast clones are trusted to go on and run his other channels and businesses.
Is it true that you train somebody to essentially be you?
Oh, 100%.
If we look at Vegapunk, his past events and failures of his childhood, and even in later years, like claiming Momonosuke's devil fruit to be a failure, or even his failures when it comes to gigantification and other experiments, might have made him realize from a young age that multitasking was the best route to go. He could put all his heart and soul and energy into a few big breakthroughs if he did it alone, or he could endlessly strive for greater heights with the hive mind Vega clones. Sometimes the best answer is the most simple and straightforward, but regarding a character like this, I would rather enjoy a much more abstract and complex explanation for everything. I hope that we do get something like this for Vegapunk, revealing the truth of devil fruits as well, because Oda has been saving up these reveals for 20 plus years, and he's had all this time to come up with something grand. So I'm truly excited to see what these secrets could be. And the evidence for the Vegaclones being a secret to his success is not only in the proof of his own futuristic societies being 500 years advanced, there's also his cloning and genetic modification technology, his ridiculous amounts of inventions, and having a fail-safe way to make Vegapunk essentially unkillable. But let's look at the Punk Hazard events where we do get a small tiny glimpse at Vegapunk. Is it possible that during Punk Hazard, when we see Vegapunk warning Caesar about his failures, when Caesar accidentally imploded a disastrous explosion, somehow Vegapunk wasn't harmed? Now Caesar being a gas Lokia, you can make the argument for his survival, but look at this clip and tell me that you can picture some old nerdy science geek surviving an explosion like this. However, if Vegapunk had an endless supply of disposable vessels, he could go through life without ever worrying about the consequences of dying, and it would explain him surviving that day. Another thing that the theorist Parvision mentioned to me when I brought up this theory to him is Vegapunk being so calm with confrontation in the presence of stronger opponents. We know that admirals like Rainbow and Fujitora have already met Vegapunk, as well as the warlords like Kuma, and then Parvision takes this even a step further, saying how calm he would have to be in the presence of Caesar, who is someone whose abilities are broken in a sense that he could instantly kill you with poisonous air. Think about how Caesar defeated Luffy for the first time. Now, cyborg enhancements are definitely part of the equation with Vegapunk, but once again, 100% survival rate would be this alternative, and with years and years of this going on, it would reach a point where people don't even attempt to attack Vegapunk because there's no point in doing so. And when we're talking about science itself, it's always changing and adding new information, reforming old outdated ideas, and it's personally why I'm not a huge fan of people who stake all their trust in solely into science and scientific theories and scientists, because the true point of science at the end of the day is to keep evolving and keep changing and keep proving the past wrong, keep changing these ideas that are already accepted as factual. Vegapunk might have realized at a very young age that spending your entire life on a scientific project only for it to fail and then fail and then fail is kind of a life wasted. All those years of hard work going down the drain, and so it's possible that if Vegapunk somehow does manage to die at the very end of the series, that we see Vegapunk entrusting Frankie to carry on his legacy and work by the end of the series. And that would be a cool moment, cementing Luffy as the person with the next Vegapunk in his crew. This would also spark another valuable lesson that without death, there's no life, without life, there isn't death. You have to have the two together to really truly appreciate both. Now, I'll be frank, the reason why I truly don't like the idea of Vegapunk being from the future is simple. It's lame. Isn't it way cooler to have someone find his own success through creative means and scientific experimentation? This is a guy who is known for creating crazy ideas. I would love his creativity to be at the forefront of this, rather than simply being someone from the future who knows everything that's possible and how to do it. It kills so much of the hype from Vegapunk's genius and mystery, which is why I try not to take the 500 years in the future thing at face value and in the literal sense. Think of how hard Oda has built up this reveal for Dr. Vegapunk, so something as unimpressive as being from the future would be cool from a story and world building aspect, and I am a huge fan of time travel, but it would also hinder Vegapunk's character, who has been built up constantly as the face of science for a reason, and being saved as the best for last for a reason as well. The chip, as far as what connects all the brains into one another, could be a product that relates to the cyborg enhancements, and also with them working together and also on their own times, having the original Vegapunk hidden away as a CEO of everything. And so what can we really take away from all this? Well, remember to believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. And if you ever start a business and are thinking of taking it to the next level, the next step is most likely outsourcing certain elements as quickly as possible and scaling up like Dr. Vegapunk with his hive mind Vegaclones. Think of Mr. Beast going from 1 channel to 2 to 5 to 20, whether it be you as an editor training and creating a team of hireable editors working under your influence, or a bodyguard elevating to the next level after years of experience creating multiple teams and trained guards for hire. I mean, even your neighborhood drug dealer took this same path unless he ended up locked up before leveling up, but I think you get the point. You can fundamentally do this with pretty much anything. If you enjoyed the video, YouTube says that you'll like this one even more. Click it now before the Golden State deletes it from history.